LinkedIn Talent Solutions is a great play to brush up on your resume, and these three offensive coordinators need to do so soon. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Today's show, a shortened one because of yesterday's basketball special. Let's go through three offensive coordinators who should be fired. I'm looking at you, BYU, and a wild first night in Big 12 basketball. Our very first Big 12 basketball night in the Big 12, a Super Monday in the Big 12, leads to some wild stuff. I'm looking at you, Oklahoma State, who decided to lose in a game where you were heavily favored. As far as football goes, which is still a bell cow right now, despite the Big 12 being the best conference in college basketball, the conversation of offensive coordinators who have to be fired starts with Aaron Roderick. Roderick, the OC at BYU, otherwise known as A-Rod, has done something dumbfounding. For a team that through the first 9 games is 5-4 on the doorstep of bowl eligibility, it might sound weird that I would want their offensive coordinator to be fired. And small caveat here. Now, this is to peel back the curtain a bit. We like to start in podcasting and radio hosting. We like to start with a poppy topic that keeps everybody engaged and watching through the whole show. Here, I'm going to put that on pause and tell you we are talking about real human beings and their livelihood, their children, where they live, where they go to work, their spouses, and a change. Somebody being fired is massive for that person's life. I don't want to take the humanity out of this, but at the same time, I'll give you this. If I stopped hosting a podcast for 3 months, if I just didn't do my job, Locked On would fire me for not doing my job. If I hosted a podcast for 3 months and it had 2 listeners every single day, they can't justify paying me the money that I make to continue doing my job. When someone's in the public sphere, a la yours truly, and they do not perform, at some point, rubber meets the road and you have to part ways with them. For A-Rod at BYU and 2 other offensive coordinators, that's currently the case. This is a guy who took a team that has not been Group of 5. I do not consider BYU Group of 5. They have recruited at a more efficient level than UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati because of how they recruit. They have played more Power 5 competition than UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati by virtue of being independent and having a tougher schedule. And while the adjustment to the Big 12 has led to a good portion of wins at 5-4, the offense could not be more pitiful. They're the only team in this league that doesn't have 3,000 combined yards of offense. They are last. Get this. They are last in the Big 12 in yards per game. They are last in the Big 12, second to last, I should say, in points per game as we speak. They are so dead last in rushing, it's not even funny. And they are second to last in passing. If you're keeping score at home, that is what we call in my industry, not good. The team is, to me, it has the horses in the stable. This isn't oh, well, BYU is going to need a couple years to adjust to the Power 5 and get better. No, they're good. 298 yards per game. Second worst in the Big 12, Iowa State, who is a Big 12 title contender, 337 yards. That's a 40-yard difference between those two, BYU being last in the league. At 218 yards per game, the only team worse right now is the West Virginia Mountaineers, which they are winning as well. But your team at 13th of 14 teams in the Big 12, that's not good. How about running the football? Worst in the league, 78 yards per game. Everybody else is over 100. Even Baylor, Texas Tech, Houston, who you don't consider to be heavy run teams. You would, I guess, Tech for sure, but a Houston, a Baylor, you would not. And then points per game, 22.9. The only team that's worse than that, the Baylor Bears, and they really stink. For BYU, You are underselling yourself with A-Rod at OC, and it's time for a change. Two others that deserve to be fired. This one's interesting. It's time for Jeff Lebby to go. This starts with the Art Briles coaching tree. Remember earlier in the year, Art Briles being on the field with Jeff Lebby? That was a bad look for Oklahoma. The University of Oklahoma was not in a strong limelight there. They're the number one team in yards per game in the Big 12 as we speak. As far as passing yards per game, they're also number one. As far as rushing yards per game, they're middle of the pack, somewhere around that 7-8 range. They average, as we speak, 177 yards per game. Not bad. Certainly not bad on the ground, especially when you're the number one team in the Big 12 when it comes to passing. Number one in points per game as well. That's good, right? But let's talk about when it mattered the most. The last couple of weeks, Oklahoma State and Kansas. That team lost because, to me, and this might sound a bit weird, but to me, the offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby, does not fit the defensive-minded Brent Venables. The offense is not complementary to the defense. Does it make sense to you? It may be tough to grasp if you're an Oklahoma fan and have watched enough Sooner football, as I've done a lot this season, and try to pinpoint where's the issue. To me, I kind of point offensively more often than not and say, it seems like when the defense comes up with a big stop, and maybe it's tough to quantify this, I'll give you that. When the defense comes with a big stop, the offense doesn't seem to complement that at all. It's a 3-and-out. Or late in the game or throughout the game against Oklahoma State or Kansas, it's all right, 3rd and short, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, jet sweep. What if we 3rd and 5 again, did a jet sweep? How about another jet sweep? It got very stagnant. Oklahoma was not opportunistic on 3rd down in those two games because the offense was stagnant. Now let's call out another one. I think not only would Oklahoma benefit from firing Jeff Lebby, not only would BYU benefit from firing A-Rod, let's go to TCU and Kendall Briles, the guy who they hired, standing behind his family, hiding from the media, hiding from the world, and said, this is our guy. This to me is similar to Oklahoma. It is tough to quantify firing a guy like Kendall Briles because the team itself, 462 yards per game, is good enough for 3rd in the Big 12. TCU, from a scoring standpoint, is much worse. They're actually on the bottom half of the Big 12 when it comes to scoring. They stall out in the red zone very often. Running the football for TCU, that is something that team has struggled with. They're in the bottom half of the Big 12, and they in that category. Then throwing the football, they're better than anybody else because they throw the ball at a higher rate. They're second in the Big 12 in passing yards per game. For TCU, your offensive coordinator doesn't match who you are. It wasn't worth going out and hiring a guy with the last name Briles just to sit back and do this, right? I just don't understand how the numbers aren't great, but I don't understand how a guy who's not a culture fit, how a guy who can come in day one and not bring you what TCU is as a program, who has the last name Briles that has been so marred over the course of TCU in the last decade plus, could come in and not step up. All right, backup quarterback. Sure, there are other teams operating with backup quarterbacks. Half the league, most of the league has operated at some point this season with a backup quarterback. And now, for you, you're not really doing it. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's tough to strip somebody of their livelihood, but Jeff Lebby, Kendall Briles, A-Rod, time to go. For those three schools, time to move on to new offensive coordinators. Let's do it. This, coming up, Locked On Big 12's preview, breakdown, last night's basketball action, a little bit of tonight's basketball action, is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the place that I go to make money. I made money last night on Bowling Green versus Chicago State. I went and I made money on Belmont against Georgia State. I'm the college basketball maniac. Live betting, James Madison against Michigan State. I made money. And in the NFL, you can make money today as well with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Big 12 basketball last night was just as insane as we have always remembered Big 12 basketball. Normal things happened, a la Kansas beating North Carolina Central 99-56. Wild things happened, a la Houston 84-31 over ULM. I mean, that ULM team is not good. Don't get me wrong. But 84-31 against anybody is it. Then there is the wacky, such as West Virginia struggling with Missouri State, a massive comeback, scoring 14 points more than the Bears in that second half to rally and get a win. That's interesting. Do I temper my expectation for West Virginia? No, I still think they are a fringe tournament team. I think they're a top 10 team in the Big 12 this season because a basketball-centric, a basketball-historic school will find a way to get it done like West Virginia. They found a way last night to win. One of my favorite quotes from a coach that I heard earlier this week, actually, is a high school football coach whose team has been giving up 30 points per game, 35 points per game this season, but his offense scores 45 points per game. I said, Coach, how are you going to win in the postseason? He said, we'll win every single game by 1 point. And West Virginia might be that team this season. They say, you know what? We'll win every single game by 1 point. That's still a win. Then Iowa State or Green Bay, 85-44. UCF surprisingly blowing out FIU and taking a little gas off, 85-62 there in the second half. Oklahoma over Central Michigan. Texas over Incarnate Word. BYU, very impressive, 110 points, 110-63 over Houston Christian. TCU, 108 points, 108-75 over Southern. Cincinnati struggled in a win over UIC in the second half, namely offensively struggled in the second half, 69-58. And let's go into the ones that really matter. Kansas State and Oklahoma State. First for Oklahoma State. A 64-59 loss to Abilene Christian. Where I thought Oklahoma State would be such a good team preseason was because of Mike Boynton. I thought, all right, I'm going to trust Mike Boynton. They're going to find a way to still be good this year and make a run at the NCAA tournament, maybe be in that 9, 10, 11 spot in the Big 12, but still have a chance at going to make some noise in March. And as of right now, after a loss to ACU, that's out the window. It's less of trying to figure out how to go to March Madness and more of trying to figure out how to not be in the bottom 3 or 4 of the Big 12 for Oklahoma State. I don't hate this roster. I love what Keon Williams gave you last night. He played 38 minutes. I watched the highlights back from this one, got to see a large portion of the game. He only scored 4 points, but he's going to be a glue guy for this team. He's going to give you glue guy moments. Mike Marsh, senior, 6'10", has the presence down low. Rebounding standpoint from Mike Marsh, I'm going to need that, right? 9 rebounds, but a little bit more because the rest of the team couldn't rebound. ACU went toe-to-toe with you on the glass last night. That's not good. Defensively for Oklahoma State, the tenacity was there. The effort felt there, right? But they weren't opportunistic. They held Abilene Christian to 27.8% from 3. That's not spectacular, but then talk about opportunistic, turning your defense into offense. 21.7% from 3 for yourselves. Not good. And what's more, 8 for 20 at the free throw line. You make 8 more free throws, you win this game. If you go 16 for 20, which is not asking a ton at the free throw line, you win. This team is young. This team is new. This team has a lot of names you're not used to in Oklahoma State jerseys. And they are going to keep losing by a lot of points, until they figure it out. They are far from that point. Abilene Christian 64, Oklahoma State 56. That is pitiful. What a bad representation. Again, it was Cleveland State last year, I think. What a bad representation for this conference. For Kansas State, I won't berate you as much. I know you're figuring out one injury. I know you're figuring out one suspension. Two of your key guys have been taken out of the lineup for the course of this season. I want to give a little bit of kudos to Tyler Perry. I say a little bit. Let's temper. And I'm sure if you watch the game, you'd probably agree here. There is a certain sense of volume shooting. While I like Tyler Perry, I don't need him to do that much. 5 for 17, not great. 4 for 12 from 3, not great. Good at the free throw line, which makes me think drive more. 6 rebounds, spectacular. 6 assists, unbelievable. 4 steals, great defensively. Those are the things that I liked, and only finished with 3 fouls. But there were times where Tyler Perry would take a shot, and I think, whoa, could have just passed. Could have just passed it there. Now, also impressed with Arthur Kaluma. Arthur Kaluma playing as much as he did, more than Tyler Perry in the game, actually, which surprised me when I went back and looked. I am impressed with the effort and the hustle of Kaluma. 9 rebounds is good. A steal. I know the turnovers were a bit of an issue for him. There were times where you're looking at Kaluma thinking, what is he doing out there? Is he okay? Probably. That's what looking back in the highlights, like, oh God, please. I get to watch a majority of the first half of this game. Volume shooting for Tyler Perry also applies to Kaluma to an extent where you think, oh, is that a good take? Sure, just make it. Please just put it in the basket, right? Use your big frame, big-ish, 6'7" for college basketball and put it in. Doesn't always do that. I was surprised to see he finished 1 for 11. Didn't get to see the full second half, but 1 for 11, over 5 from 3. Can we let's get him inside a little bit here? Use the free throw line. 6 points, not great, but 36 minutes of play. I was impressed with the effort that he gave. First game of the season, he's going to come into his own. I'm going to give him time. And the bench, you played 6 guys, really. 6 guys from the bench. So 11 players total. That's a lot to figure out. It's a lot to figure out. And USC being a top 25 team, being right now number 21 in the country, that's good. Kansas State, you're going to need to get everybody healthy, and get everybody off the suspension list, and that would be great. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I go to find the best tickets, lowest prices every time I'm looking to go to an event. I went to the Dallas Stars game last night, saw the Stars, from where my USA jersey right now, saw the Stars play the Boston Bruins with Locked On Baylor's Cameron Stewart. He'll give you the preview of Baylor and Auburn going on today. And in doing that, I bought my tickets from Game Time. Last minute tickets from Game Time with a zone deal that got me in the effectively front row, a couple rows up. Game Time's the place to go right now. Download the Game Time app. Get $20 off your first purchase with code Locked On. Use code Locked On, $20 off. And look, if the tickets are $20, the ones you're buying are $20, you use code Locked On and get free tickets. Yeah. That's exactly what happens at Game Time right now. Download the app, the Game Time app. Get last-minute tickets, the lowest prices. That is guaranteed. Download the Game Time app when you are going to an event, sporting event, concert, even a comedy show at Game Time. Download the app today. All right, let's close up shop here. Baylor and Auburn tonight. Yeah, how fun is that? College basketball, Big 12 basketball marches through. Again, I'm impressed with a couple of these teams. I'm impressed with parts of what Kansas State has. Not very impressed with Oklahoma State. Super enamored with Houston's defense. LJ Cryer, my man. The Baylor transfer coming out for Houston, only dropping 9 points. Surprising. But hey, I know your bench played a lot down the stretch. For West Virginia, fighting back to get a win. Big learning moment. Look at UCF blowing out FIU unexpectedly. Iowa State almost doubling up Green Bay. I like what this conference has going on. BYU scoring 110 points, 56 to 18 at halftime. I had to double take against Houston Christian. Uh-oh. What if we got a deep league this year? What if we got another deep league? I'd love that. All 14 teams competing. UCF, what can you give me? Oklahoma State, what can you give me? I'll tell you what I can give you. A good podcast every day. Hopefully good. This has been, it always will be. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk more football, basketball, and everything else Big 12. Locked on. Thank you for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.